Hello, everybody. It's quicker. We'll see. I hope you're enjoying seeing me today. Happy whatever day you're watching this. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, blah, 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 blah. Um, I'm starting to feel better. You might hear me slur a little bit. It's because of the teeth, I assure you. Always like to get this out of the way if you're going through a mental health crisis and or debating a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Stop this video and dial 988, which is the international mental health crisis / suicide hotline. Whatever you're going through, it's not as big of a deal that you should be considering permanent solutions. You're important, and you're loved, and you're wanted. And I mean that. Every time I say that, I really genuinely mean that. It's not like I agreed to say that with somebody. It's something that hits close to my heart. So today, we'll talk about a different experience. We're going to do a little history here, but this one will be fun. They're all fun, aren't they? So, education was highly emphasized in my home growing up. I better bring home good grades. Like, boy, was there an emphasis on you have to do well in school. It was emphasized homework at this time, and I did not grow up in a strict household whatsoever, unless it had to do with my schoolwork. Then the house turned quite strict. But there was one class that I tried my hardest to fail. I wanted to fail this course. I wanted to run home and show my parents an F. And I failed at failing. I don't know how the hell I did that. I tried to fail. But instead, I passed. I literally did everything I could to fail this class. And they wouldn't let me. What was this class? This was the DARE program. Remember DARE, everyone? Drug Abuse Resistance Education. Which I'd like to talk about that name for a second, just to get out of the way. The name is really dumb in and of itself. What? It sounds good to me. First off, it doesn't flow well. And so, drug abuse, okay. So we're dealing with drug abuse, not necessarily drug use, unless they're going to tell us that drug use and drug abuse are interchangeable, which anyone who knows anything knows they're not. Okay. Resistance. Okay. So they want me to resist abusing drugs. So I guess it's going to be okay if I am an occasional dabbler? Is that going to be it? No. And then the word education. Really? Because, I learned a lot in DARE. I personally called it the thank you for teaching me how to use drugs class. Because everything about the DARE that I went through, I'll get back to why I said that, was wrong and counterintuitive. Now, why do I feel the need to make a damn video on this? A, for entertainment. B, because the government knew about it. And they subjected millions of young children, because I think I was in like the 5th grade, to this ludicrous non-scientifically based class while they had reports from various governmental agencies discussing how and why it won't work. But Reagan and then Bush and then Clinton, so, this is a bipartisan, nonsense, could use it to campaign off of, and they were making it rain off of the DARE program. So do I dare to talk crap about DARE? Yeah, damn right. So the program was first brainstormed in 1983 by Chief of the Los Angeles Police Department, Daryl Gates. You want a story of just a racist guy? You know how the LAPD of the 80s and 90s had a reputation of being really racist? That dude, Daryl Gates, who ended up having to resign in shame after the Rodney King beating. But that's another story for another day. So, him, along with Harry Handler, cool name dude, who was the superintendent of the local Los Angeles Unified School District, and no actual social workers or doctors, wrote up this nonsense program. And within 5 years, President Ronald Reagan declared September 15th National DARE Day, which ended up being repealed by President Obama. But there was actually a federal DARE Day because of a program which the president and vice president very much well knew scientifically was not only a waste of time, but dangerous. Did he say dangerous? Dangerous. So, let's talk about my DARE experience. Okay? Because it's all about me. It's all about me. So, one day in the 5th grade, I was going to my whatever course I thought was next. Math, science, social stuff. No. It was day 1 of what was going to be a 17-week journey of DARE. So, I come into this classroom, and there is the local school police officer who we call Detective Hard. Gonna be honest with you, I don't think that was his real name. Because I looked everywhere to try to find, I went to the Hillsdale Police Department website, former police officers in Hillsdale, New Jersey. I really looked hard just to try to find, a short little bio on this guy. And there was nothing. Nothing. So he introduced himself, and along with him was somebody in a lion's outfit, which we later found out their name was Darren the Lion. And I couldn't imagine whoever was in that outfit was happy with their assignment of the day, which is where I say they could have ended the program right then and it been successful. Had Darren the Lion taken off the headpiece of his costume only to expose that guy, gal, non-binary pal who bullied you a few years earlier, who then maybe was caught with a little pot, that would be so embarrassing. I think that would have prevented a lot of drug use. Because this program sure as hell effing didn't. But I just think, if you get caught doing drugs, you got to go into your school, your old school, in a Darren the Lion costume Boom, that would have been a perfect program. But that's not what we got. So the name, too, it opened itself up to mockery because DARE, drugs are really fill in the blank. Expensive? That was the one I thought I was cute and just made up. And then everyone was saying, but it's all over the internet, so obviously I wasn't that original. But I'll own it for now. Now, I'd like to talk about the type of house I grew up in when it came to discussing these matters. Inside my house, at that age, or any age, there was no issues with drugs. However, my dad would often glorify his collegiate days, of which were not as dare friendly, let's say. Darren the Lion wouldn't have approved. Basically, he liked to talk about all the stuff he did and how he got messed up in college. And it was fun. Did he glorify it a little too much? Maybe, but not really, because it's not like I'd be like, it wasn't in a way that's like, you should do this, and nor was anything being done in my house. Other than, of course, my dad did have his alcohols of choice, which I'm going to get to. So, when I went home, because they gave us like a dare packet, and they wanted the parents to ask their children questions to see if they were high risk of becoming a drug addict. I believe when I brought this questionnaire home, it was immediately thrown into the trash and we went about dinner. But really? Like, okay. Now, so my dad just asked me to very kindly ask Detective Hard the next day the next week it would have been, if there's any evidence or any professional writing or just anything to prove that marijuana is any more of a gateway drug than milk. Yeah, that stuff, you drink. Oh, Detective Hart and we were going to clash. For 17 weeks we were going to clash. Because he knew me, if he really existed. Not because I had done anything wrong at that point, but because when my parents were away for 1 week, we had a stay-at-home babysitter who was, I believe at that point, like late high school years, and she threw some parties that she probably shouldn't have. And it actually led to the police coming, and Detective Hard was one of them, if he was really called Detective Hard. And on the second dare class, he told us this story, which I can't make this up, that nobody is immune from getting arrested for drugs. That one time, he caught his daughter smoking the wacky tobacco in the privacy of their home to deal with stress. He gave the reason, and he arrested her. This was not going to be the type of guy I was going to get along with. But, so, there was, going back to that first day, when we sat down, they rolled in the TV. If anyone from my day remembers, they would roll into the TV and you would hope there's a substitute, which was not the case here. And they showed us the video of somebody holding an egg, saying, "This is your brain." You would crack it, He would put it onto a pan that was already heated, and the egg would fry, and he would say, "This is your brain on drugs." And then follow it up with, "Any questions?" Boom! Hand goes up. The detective, I'm going to call him the detective. I don't even know if he was really a detective either. I just think this guy was nonsense. But he asked me what my question was, and I told him I didn't have a question for him. I had a question for the person who was soliciting questions, which was the person on the video. Told me that person wasn't there. Now I knew this. I was being a little pain in the ass. But so I said, why would somebody solicit questions if they're not here to answer the question? I have a question for him, not for you. He's like, I can answer anything he can. And I made up something stupid. What was the exact temperature of that pan? How long were you in makeup right before this was recorded? Just dumb stuff that I knew the detective wouldn't be able to answer. The detective. And it was going to be adversarial. Let's just leave it at that. And also, I think they might have known my dad. Because my dad, as I said, in college, had a good time. And when my parents moved to Hillsdale, New Jersey, they didn't know anybody. So my mom bumped into someone she knew from somewhere at the supermarket, and they were having a let me meet the neighbors type party. So she invited this woman and said, you can bring anybody else you want. So a few different couples came, and I called them the Ned Flanders crew. And they saw my dad, and they bolted. Because I guess they went to Ithaca College too. And I think Detective Hard, or Detective Schwanezel, whatever his name was part of the Ned Flanders crew. Do I know that for a fact? Absolutely not. But it makes for a better story. So, at this point in time, Nancy Reagan, who I don't fault that much, believe it or not, I give Nancy Pants a pass. Because she wasn't an elected official. The idea wasn't a bad thing, trying to prevent kids from using drugs. That's a good idea. Implemented beyond garbage, but a good idea. And I don't believe she had any malicious intent on the Just Say No campaign. I believe she believed that was the best they could do. So, I'm one of the few who give Nancy Pants on this one a pass. Ronnie Boy doesn't get it, though. We'll get into that, though, a little later on this. So, one of the days we had to do these mock skits with the detective, where he would play the drug dealer who wants to offer fifth graders free drugs. Because that guy existed in my community. And for some reason, I never got called up for that. I was told at the end it was because my name was last in the alphabet, and they just ran out of time. The issue with that was I actually knew my ABCs, and I knew there were two people in the class whose last name alphabetically ended after mine. It must have been an accident on their part. Must have been an accident on their part. I don't think so. Now, another thing that made Detective, oh, by the way, we had a little nickname for him amongst my friends. I'm a little embarrassed about it, but I'll share it with you. Again, this is a confession. We called him Detective Hard On. And some people, absolutely including me, behind his back, of course, would refer to him as Detective Boner. Not nice, not nice, not justifying it, but it was what it was. However, they were committing fraud because I asked Detective if he had a teaching certificate. No. Okay. Remember, education, big deal in my house. Do you have a social worker certificate? No. So, what qualifies you to teach this course? I've arrested a lot of people who have used drugs. Oh, well, that's definitely gives you the qualifications to teach me how to not use them. Teaches me how to avoid you and make a YouTube video making fun of you 30 years later. And that's about it. Now, I want to talk about why it didn't work. It didn't work, A, because it was stupid, but firstly, the whole taught by a cop thing, okay? The second part is they didn't really differentiate between drugs. Like, if you do one drug, you are screwed. And there's this really funny YouTube video, I highly recommend you look it up, called Helen Hunt on Crank, where you see her take a sniff of some powdery substance after being pressured by her boyfriend. Her character's name, I believe, was Sarah, and her boyfriend was Steve. And just your typical, it's our anniversary. Do it for me. Everybody's doing it. So eventually, Helen Hunt became mad about you. I really wanted to slip that in there somewhere better, but yeah. So, mad about you. So, she took a little sniff off camera. You didn't actually see it happen. And you see her jump out of a third-story window, survive, bounce back, and start taking the shards of glass and stabbing herself. And this was an actual educational anti-drug video going around the schools at the time. It is highly entertaining. Helen Hunt on Crank. Please look it up. I can't talk enough about just how funny it is. Also, just another little issue I have is they told us that if you were to ever do LSD, which for anyone who doesn't know, is a hallucinogenic drug, that 20 years after you do it, you will get a involuntary flashback while driving. Yeah, they tossed in while driving. Now, I've known a lot of people who have done acid in their day. Not going to say if I have or not. Okay, yeah, I have. And it's been over 20 years. Haven't gotten that freebie yet. Not one person I know who's ever done acid has told me that 20 years later they had like the whole trip experience again. And it definitely didn't happen while driving because it didn't happen. Now, the government has done a very good job at trying to hide the original DARE curriculum, the 17 weeks. Guess what? They're not as good as me, because I found it. Now, so I'm going to just list off quickly with a little talking crap the topics of every week. Now, another huge issue, though, before I list them is it was a boilerplate program. Thus, every community got the same program. there was no fluidity due to the socioeconomic or racial status of a community. So some of these things definitely would apply to certain communities, but not mine, which was a, middle class, almost no violence community. But, and vice versa. So, week one, I don't think they wanted me to find this. This took a while. So, you're welcome. Introducing DARE. 2. Understanding the effects of mind-altering drugs. Yeah, this was the day where they actually brought us photos of all the drugs, a description of what they do, their formal name, their slang name, and a physical map of the high-risk places to go. Once again, this is why I called it the Teaching Us How to Use Drugs class. Another one, so week 3, consequences. So I guess week 2 and 3 were kind of like the same thing. 4, changing beliefs about drug use. I didn't believe anything at that point. I might have known what marijuana was, hadn't used it. I knew alcohol was a thing, because I would be around adults who would drink, but changing my beliefs, how about you're teaching me, cool. It's just so insane. Okay. 5, resistance techniques, ways to say no. Okay, I just got to say this. Just say no, ways to say no. They would tell us to say you have an appointment, say you're busy, say you're... Not one time did they suggest you to say, no, I don't want to do that. Everything they taught us to say was some form of lie. Just pointing that out. 6, building self-esteem. Really? Didn't know there was a professional in mental health there at the time. 7, assertiveness, a response style to the guy going around offering 5th graders in Hillsdale, New Jersey, drugs. Yeah. 8, managing stress without drugs. Well, I don't think there was anyone in that class in the 5th grade who had done drugs. Now, of course, in the country, absolutely, but not in my community at that time. So every single experience I had managing stress was without drugs. 9, reducing violence. Wasn't a violent person. Actually, I think I did get into a fight, though, in that school. The men's bathroom against Glenn McElroy. Over what? I have no idea. So, that didn't work. 10, media influences on drug use and alcohol. This was where the Reagan administration and then the Bush administration, actually mainly, and Dan Quayle ran with this, and then Al Gore ran with this, just to crap on certain TV shows that they didn't want you to watch. I remember Married with Children they would talk about, which is one of the best shows ever. That was just their way to try to mess with our minds. 11, making decisions about risky behavior. Okay. Don't do it. Done. I just taught you lesson 11. 12, say yes to positive alternatives. Okay. But that's all I've been doing is positive alternatives. You only just told me about these negative alternatives in this class. So, thanks for telling me I should take the positive alternatives while you're the one who taught me the negative ones. Okay. Positive role modeling. This was an issue. This one I want to go into a little bit. This is where they would deputize 5th graders into mini DEA agents who would say, and they would have a dare box in front of the classroom for you to rat out your friends. And this actually came to, and they also used their friendliness to tell you if you suspect there's any drug use going on in your home, to speak to the officer. This came to a head when there was a 11-year-old girl in 1989 in Miami named Crystal Grindell, who was badgered beyond belief emotionally, not physically, by her dare officer to say if there's any drugs being used in her home. Now, her parents maybe smoked a joint a week, something like that. And they used their friendliness, and she didn't say anything at first, but they emphasized and they just, yeah, come on, Crystal, we know. And eventually she said, okay, my parents smoke marijuana maybe once a week. And they showed up like just FBI, police, and really scarred her for life. And both her parents, I mean, it was thrown out, like right away almost. And she ended up suing the school district in Miami, which taught her that, and the judge ruled in her favor because obviously if there's abuse going on in a house, it should be reported. 100% support that. But there's a line. I'm not one of those what happens at home stays at home people. No, I'm not. But if there's nothing really bad going on, the school shouldn't put in your mind that there is and then use it to try to turn these fifth graders who have no idea what they're talking about anyway into snitches. It's just such an awful model. And then they suggested that we go into our parents' liquor cabinet, and I remember this so specifically, and take their cigarettes and destroy their cigarettes and dispose of the alcohol. Boy, am I glad I didn't do that, because that might have gotten me killed. I kind of wish I did do that because the story would be awesome now. But that would have been a really difficult, tense moment in my home to explain that, hey, Dad and Mom, I went into your property and destroyed it and disposed of it. Which, yeah, the school told me to. Who at the school? The guy who claims he arrested his own daughter for smoking weed. Like, really? Like, I'm just really happy I didn't do that. That would have been bad. Week 14. No, actually, I want to stay on that for a second. Because the former Secretary of Education and nation's first drug czar, William Bennett, encouraged children to turn in their friends and parents. He said, let's absolutely be clear about the point in a speech he gave. It isn't snitching or betrayal to tell an adult or a friend of yours that they're using drugs and they need help. Whoa. Whoa. There was nothing in the DARE program about what to do after you use drugs, after you make a bad decision. It was all preventative. So he was confusing the brains of the children. It was just, it just is. I'm entertained now, but it just, like, How'd they let this happen? Okay. 14. Resist gang and group violence. Yeah. Because there were many gangs, the Bloods and the Crips, who were really coming after, really wanted this guy in their membership. I was a hot commodity for the gangs, and I needed to learn how to resist them. Now, I readily admit that I'm sure there are communities all over the country that benefited from that aspect of learning. But I got nothing out of that, which is why a one-size-fits-all program is a bad idea. Okay. 15. Project Dare Summary. This is one of where this was where we could ask questions. I actually think they might have held me back from class that day because I'm pretty sure I would have taken advantage of that and just asked a crap ton of questions to piss them off, but I think they might have held me and just kept me in the guidance counselor's office under some reason they made up. Because if I was running the DARE program, I wouldn't want me in there that day asking questions. Week 16, this is one of the biggest regrets of my days, is they made us take a pledge to not use drugs. And I should have stood up and refused to take that pledge. But I took the pledge. However, and this is where I want everyone to keep a secret, okay? Don't tell anyone. But there's a way you can actually say something and do the opposite and keep your personal sense of morality. I'm going to tell you what it is. Again, don't tell people. I don't want, children to know or politicians, like the trustworthy groups. But if you say something dishonest, you take 2 fingers in your hand. Typically, historically, it's the index and middle finger, and you cross them, and you hide it behind your back. Whatever you say is null and void. So that's what I did. I crossed my finger. But now, however, don't do it on both hands, because then they cancel each other out. But that's how you do it. And I'm sure that's what I did. I'm sure I made fun of something. And then on the last day, the 17th class, which was the DARE culmination and DARE graduation, but in week 16, we had to write an essay about what we learned in DARE, and this I remember. I wrote, "Thank you for teaching me about all the drugs I plan on doing as quickly as I can find them." Remember, my goal was to fail. And then the next week, week 17, was our graduation, which I'm like, there's no way they're going to let me graduate after what I wrote. And they actually had the Macho Man Randy Savage's theme song. I mean, da, 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 da. Forgot what it's actually called. They let me, I graduate. How the hell did they let me graduate this shit? They didn't care. There was such a lack of, I don't even think they read it. Because if anyone actually read that, a 5th grader, it might have had some, I don't know. But I tried to fail. I really tried to fail, and they wouldn't let me. Okay. Now, how do I know it's bullshit? Oh, sorry, the YouTube people. Because I literally couldn't find one study that talked about how the original DARE program was a good idea. So I could literally fill a multi-hour video just reading off quotes from studies. But I'm just going to give a few. PBS. The results of this study underscore the need for more robust prevention programming targeted specifically at risk factors, the inclusion of booster sessions to sustain positive effects, and greater attention to interpersonal relationships of the developmental process in adolescent substance abuse. slash individual level characteristics. Richard Clayton, Ann Catellero, and Brian M. Johnson, all PhDs. The National Institute of Health was a little more succinct. Our study supports all findings that indicate DARE is ineffective. Stephen West, Kerry O'Neill, PhD. Crime Solutions quoted the National Institute of Justice, which said, DARE will make more drug addicts. Well, to the point, at least. Cops in the Classroom, an article called A Longitudinal Evolution of Drug Abuse Resistance Education, copy in the Classroom, written by Dennis Rosenbaum, Robert Fwelling, and Donna L. Wilkinson, all PhDs, stating Project DARE has become America's most popular and prevalent drug addiction program. Despite the status, the effectiveness of the program has yet to be demonstrated. A longitudinal randomized experiment was conducted with 1,584 students to estimate the effectiveness of DARE on their attitudes, beliefs, and drug use behaviors in the years following exposure to the program. DARE had no statistical significant main effects on drug use behaviors and few to little effects on attitudes or beliefs on drug use. Let's throw another one in there. The American Psychological Association said the program doesn't work and in fact is counterproductive, leading to higher drug use amongst high school students who went through it compared to the students who did not. Now, DARE recanted this. They wanted to show that there was a problem. So they showed an article that said 9 people in Colorado and 12 people at Coachella died due to eating edible marijuana candies. And DARE actually posted this on their website to try to retort some of these studies, although the Reagan administration was doing a really good job at hiding them. Now, unfortunately for DARE, that incident of the people dying due to eating the edibles was actually in the Village Voice, and it was a piece of satire. It didn't really happen. They didn't bring the receipts like I did. You can Google any of those quotes I did, and boom, they will pop up. But this was posted in the Village Voice. So, when you finished DARE the last day, after you graduated, they gave you some pencils that said, don't use drugs. But it was in a way that you could sharpen the don't off of it, which was the first thing anyone did. And suddenly you had pencils that said, do drugs. Keep in mind, all they had to do was flip it around, and that wouldn't have been possible. But that's how just unintelligent any notions about this program were. So why did it exist for so long? Why would the Reagan administration try to, keep it if it wasn't working? Okay, I'm happy you asked. First, politics. It looked good. It looked like war on drugs, which, as we now know, has been an abysmal failure. But we're, preventing children from even entering that world early. No, you're teaching me about that world, but good point. But politically, it was just used. And also, it was a cash cow. Because not only was the government influxing their money to it, they were getting private donations. Just a few of the companies that would donate $1 million yearly, just so they could say they did. Acro, Balanier, Coca-Cola Bottling Company, Herbalife. The name Herbalife, please see the irony in that. Kentucky Fried Chicken, Kimberly Clark, McDonald's, Hewlett Packard, Bell, Warner Brothers, Pacific Security. Yeah, these companies, they kept donating. But all good things must come to an end. But not really. As time went on, people started to realize it was nonsense. So it became an assignment of DARE to have the students, because now we're reaching a point where like social media is becoming a thing and students know how to work with computers. We're entering the 2000s. They would have competitions. This was long when I was done with it, and I was getting high at Boston University. I mean, studying very hard at Boston University. They would have student competitions to make advertisements promoting DARE. Yeah. And then they would use them nationally, and did they give the kids any money for it? Absolutely not. Until in 2009, DARE, as we knew it, went bankrupt and became a footnote in American history. And that's not where the story damn well ends, because DARE, just like the phoenix in the ashes, is back. While I was doing research for this, I was looking at some YouTube videos, and I would see DARE graduation, and I would just skip over them, until I was like 2021, 2022, 2020, what? I was under the impression that DARE went away in 2009. So how are they having these graduations now? Because they reincorporated it. And they're calling it Keeping It Real. REAL is an acronym. Refuse, explain, avoid, and leave. Supposedly, now this I will not be part of this presentation. Maybe I'll do this at a later date. But it's more interactive. It's not just fear-based. They also teach you what to do if you make a decision to use drugs, but I don't know. I haven't gone through this new age DARE program, but I'm going to do some research on it because they ain't getting away with this again. No. Keep in mind, this was before the opioid crisis. This was before the crack epidemic, when it was created. All this was before every day there's a mass shooting. Every single goal they set out for failed. Everything. And got worse. Not one positive came out of that program. So the fact that it exists in any form now, by the way, it came back with the huge support of Jeff Sessions. Remember him? Trump's first attorney general who he turned his back on? Little short guy. But that was the guy behind it. It's about the new age DARE. I need to do some research, but to wrap this up, drugs are a bad thing. I readily admit, don't do them. But if we're going to teach people about it, we need to stop lying to children. And I'm really curious, because this new age DARE, Keeping It Real, is being taught at the same school that I was subjected to DARE. I want to check it out. Oh, do I want to check it out. So I've gone on way too long. I love you. It's good to see everyone, or you see me. And hopefully I'll have something shorter next time. I just felt like going off on this on September 15th, remember to not celebrate Dare Day.